This is Scott Vanderploeg from the Artist Edition Index at aeindex.org. And we have Scott Dunbier here to join us and discuss all things AE, but most importantly, David Mazzucchelli's Batman Year One Artist Edition. Thank you for joining me.
Hi, Scott. Thank you for having me, and it's a pleasure, as always, to be here.
It is very nice to chat with you again, I must admit. And I was so thankful to that my store got the book in a couple days ahead of time, so I was able to read through it and get my review done. Uh, Release date is on Tuesday, and my review's live now online, and my flip through video is live. So please have a look at that. If you haven't seen it already, then come back to this video.
So let me ask you:
Yeah.
thumbs up, thumbs down?
Oh, two
How's
thumbs.
your? Okay, all right.
It's funny because people ask all the time what I'm new to comics, I'm interested in comics, I haven't, and they say, what comic do you recommend? And I recommend Batman Year One absolutely every time, the first time, because I'm just so enamored with it. But it's also, there's a heavy dose of nostalgia involved with it. Was this past your period of nostalgia? Like, I know you've got a lot of the early arts editions you did, there's a lot of nostalgia to focus for you, bring back the memories. Did you have any attachment to this work before you started on this book?
Oh yeah, I mean, and to reiterate what you were saying about telling people that this is a book they should start with, that's 100% true. I mean, not only is it a work of art. It transcends the medium in a lot of ways, but it's also completely accessible in a way that, something like V for Vendetta, or even Watchmen might not be that accessible. Um, it and as far as nostalgia, I read this book when I was 23 years old, so I think that's safe to say is still in the realm of being young enough where it made a huge impact on me. It was, I mean, that whole mid 80s era was, um, almost a revolution for how great comics were. And, starting with Miller and Mazzucchelli's work on Born Again, and then following it up with this, I mean, what a 1-2 punch.
So you've now published two of Mazzucchelli and Miller's works, Daredevil Born Again, and now Batman Year One. Do you have a favorite?
It's funny. People do ask me all the time if I have a favorite artist edition, and I make a joke saying, they're all my children. How do you pick a favorite child? I love them both, but I think maybe because of the long journey to do Batman Year One, I think I've got to go with Batman Year One. Also, the fact that David was so intimately involved in the creation of the Batman Year One Artist Edition, much more so than the Daredevil Born Again. I think that, this one has to come out on top.
I don't want to focus on Daredevil Born Again, but I mean, it was 2012. You releasing this book. I mean, it was for me. That was the big artist edition again at that time. The earlier works, well, actually, Rocketeer was a little before my reading, and this, so that was the first real nostalgia artist edition for me to hit. David had all the artwork. You approached him. How did that roll about? And then how does that contrast to how this book was put together?
With with Daredevil Born Again, I reached out to David. We talked about a few different things, and he supplied me with the scans. He scanned all the art as he did on this book. Most of the art. There were some things in both books that I needed to scan that were in collectors' hands, but the vast majority David had either still had or had made scans of before he let them go. Um, on Born Again, it was a much different process because when that book came about, I basically I did the book with the designer Randy Dalk, and we just did it, and um, Randy did a fantastic job. I sent the PDF to David at the end when it was done, and his response was, "This looks great. Go with it." And he didn't have one change. And by the way, the idea for, if you look at the cover of Daredevil Born Again, you'll notice that on the bottom there are some dots, and Randy had a great idea. I wish I could take credit for this. It's a brilliant idea. He actually put down uh, Braille, Daredevil in Braille, which really was a fantastic idea. When um, but anyway, so when that book came out, it was very well received. It was the best-selling artist edition that IDW ever did. And I immediately wanted to do Batman Year One. There were some issues with that, not from David, but from DC. They were at that time going in a different direction and weren't really keen on doing more artist editions. We did some, but they wanted to sort of split the license and they were going to have someone else do it, which again is fine. David was always very loyal because he was very happy with the way Born Again came about. And, we've known each other a long time. So he was always hoping that I would do it, which was great for me because I really wanted to do it. You know, Batman Year One means more to me personally than Born Again, but that's, apples and oranges. Um, and so I always told David that if we ever had the chance to do Batman Year One, that he could be as involved as he wanted. So we could either do it like we did on the first book, or he could be more involved if he wanted to be in Batman Year One. And eventually, thankfully, we worked out an arrangement, and we were able to get permission from DC and then from David to do the book.
And this is the first time you're working with Chip Kidd on an artist edition. How did that relationship come about?
You know, Chip is a great designer. He's a little rough around the edges. He's kind of, a young guy, and I thought I'd give him a break. So obviously, I'm making a stupid dad joke. Um, Chip Kidd is a not only a legendary designer and a brilliant designer, he's also a great person, and he is a huge Batman fan. And um, and Scott, as you know, I never met a tangent I didn't like. So I will break away for a second and tell a little story, and that is um, artist editions had there were two main germs of ideas for my inspiration to do them. And one of them was Chip Kidd, because Chip Kidd did a book, I forgot what it was called, Collecting Batman or Batman Collecting or something like that. That was basically a book of his Batman collecting. And in that book, there's a photograph of a Neil Adams page that is photographed, and you can see every detail. You can see the ink gradients. You can see the blue pencil notations for editorial. It looked fantastic. And so that was actually the second inspiration for an artist edition. But with Chip, When we announced that we were actually before we announced doing the book, I had mentioned it to Chip, think. I think I mentioned it to him at New York Comic Con a couple of months beforehand, and Chip said, "Oh my God, I want to design that." And I said, "Chip, I would love to have you design it. We cannot afford you." And he just said, "We'll make it work." Because he really wanted to do this. And so that's how Chip became involved. And he was great. It was a very close collaborative experience working with him and with David as well.
As I went through the book, I don't know how to else to describe express it. It felt very restrained, Chip Kidd, almost like I didn't see a lot of his influence in the book. In the introduction, where there's the one page separates the introduction and it's just black, it's black with large white text. I thought, oh yeah, that's Chip Kidd to me. But then, like I said, the rest, it seemed to the design seemed very restrained. I don't know another word to describe that. Did you? When we talk about, well, we could break down a bit of the design. Like why the choice of the cover to have no text? All the text is on the back and the spine. So that's a big departure from any other book you've done.
Yeah, but I think you're looking at it not quite as we did. And let me just say that the cover that you see with some minor tweaks was the first draft that Chip sent to David and I. And both of us just said, "That's great. That's perfect." But the reason, and I've seen some people who have had complaints about the title being on the back. I don't view that the same way because honestly, I don't view I don't view the cover necessarily being front or back. I feel the entire thing is the cover. I mean, especially because you got to remember when you actually order the book, when you receive the book, it comes in a box with a shipping or a label, a sell sheet on the front of the box. To me, that's the cover right there. So to me, that's what people see. So really, who cares? Who cares if it's on the front or the back? You've already bought the book. It's only a matter of design choice at that point. And you know, you know, I was surprised to see it on the back also, but I loved it. I mean, there wasn't any hesitation. I always went, "That's brilliant." And David agreed. He felt the same way. So, for all you guys who want a traditional book, well, sorry, there are plenty others out there. It's okay to have something a little bit different.
I see it frequently on French or Belgian books. I've always admired the aesthetic, just to have an image for the cover, and then, as you say, we know what the book is. But also, the book's giant. I'm not sure I'm going to have it front facing on any bookshelf anywhere. So,
Right. It's too big. I mean, it's 14 and a half by 21 inches. It's gigantic.
so then the other big design choice is the I don't want to say borders. I guess page backgrounds. Well, what would you call that? Is that a background? Is that a border?
I think it's a background because the each page is presented exactly the shape of the art, which artist editions generally are sort of done like that, but not to the extent this book was. I mean, this book, every single page, whether it's one of the printed pages or one of the layout pages or one of the initial design pages that David did for the characters, they're all cut to the actual edge of the paper. And some of them are like that, and they're exactly cut around the art, and they're laid on top of the page, and I think it makes for a very intense experience. I mean, you look at it and you don't really notice it until you really look at it, and then you see what was done. I
Who's
think.
no, I love it. But whose decision was to go? First off, whose decision was that to put that in, or who suggested it or asked for it? And then part two there is why black for the pencils and gray for the inks?
That was all David. He had a specific vision, but it was a vision that evolved over time. You know, we had talked about some different things. Chip had done some different variations. Chip actually was the one who said he wanted to do something different than white. I think he might have even suggested black, but I can't remember. You got to remember this book, it's been a long time since we began working on it. Um, I think that I think the black was Chip's idea, which I think David liked, but then he wanted to do the gray on the art to separate it from the pages from the layouts.
And there's so many, I want to say, first times for this artist edition as opposed to the other books you've released. So as well, so we have layouts first, and then inked boards. So what was the idea of how, traditionally you would have the full story, full ink boards at the front, and then you put layouts. You put that in a gallery at the back. So what was influenced or created that decision to have layouts opening and then the ink boards and then following that for the four issues?
If you'll notice that you'll notice that the book is done chronologically. So, it starts off with the design pages where he's working out what's in there to the layouts for the first issue, story, layouts for the second, story, going all the way through. Um, and then you have the section that has the cover roughs and the final cover for one of the collections, and then you have the Who's Who piece. It was basically, and there might I can't say for sure the Who's Who piece came out after the collections, maybe not, but that was generally the idea of doing it. We did have some constraints because if you if you look at the if you look at the there are two pages that have vellum,
Hmm.
and those pages have to lie between signatures.
Oh.
So they cannot lie in any place, and so the final one was that dictated where that went. So there might have been the only piece that came out not in chronological order, but I'm not sure. I couldn't tell you. Um, yeah.
I, yeah.
Did I answer that question? I don't know. I was rambling.
Like I said, if anybody's read my review, I just basically gush over the book. I'm just in love with it, and I'm trying not to ask questions to fit my narrative, trying to get how things happen. But uh, the as well. So now there's art through the book, but there's very few notes. Like there's no indication that that's a who's who page or when it came out, or and the same with the promotional material and there's the trade paperback cover in the back as well as the hardcover cover. So why no notes? Why not notate those kind of items?
I don't know.
Oh,
We felt that the book was the book, and I think look, I'm going to sound pompous here, but there's a purity of this form that where we like to, and I think David saw that too. And he really embraced it, that this shows the art for what it is in its purest form. And you know, that's all I can really say about it.
all right, that's fine. Yeah, the
And I know I sound incredibly pompous when I
oh,
say that, so sorry, everybody.
it's true. I love that there's a
You
no one
just said it's true. You just agreed with me. Okay,
I
no, I'm
I
kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
no one comes to these books, or very few people will comes to these books with no experience of the comic themselves. So I actually have every format year one has been produced in, and I was comparing it to my Absolute Batman Year One because the Absolute has the layouts in the back. It's got the script. It's got most of the same extras, like his promotional art and things like that, with the commentary. And just I was thinking that's what I was thinking when you look at I'm not coming to this brand new. No one's going to say, "Oh, I've always wanted to read Batman Year One. I've heard it's a good story. Let me spend $150 or 195 Canadian, and I'll see if it's any good." Right? So
Sure, sure.
you're coming to it you're coming with experience, and I'm coming with it with nostalgia, and people are coming with it with the I don't know, maybe it's the baggage of having read the story, and then they're going to compare it to this. It's hard not to open an artist edition and compare. Even in David's introduction, he talks a lot about Richmond Lewis and how important the color was as part of his process. So then we've got this no color, and you included two pieces. You included two color guides in the back. So we got one both collections, the hardcover. Were you able to see more of the colored guides, and what inspired you to include these two color pages at the back?
I've never seen any of the color guides in person.
Okay.
And everything that went in the book was David's choice. Um, there is a second Who's piece of the Riddler, and I know who has the art, and he kindly offered to bring it down to my house, and I would scan it, and we could include it in the book. And I I told David that, and he thought about it, and then he said, it's not part of this book. He appreciated it. He told me to thank the guy, but he also said it's not part of this book. This is not a general art book. This is Batman Year One. So the Commissioner Gordon Who's Who piece fit, but the Riddler one wouldn't.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And again, with the color guides in the back, those were David's choice because, he wrote a very long and very thoughtful introduction, and it really it's new and it's informative and it's entertaining to me. Um, and I think that well, I know that everything in the book has a very specific reason for being there to David.
I love the introduction. I mean, if we think of the artist edition, as pulling back the wizard's curtain, then we've got the wizard telling us about the experience. And I really enjoyed how in depth he got in that because his for his commentary in the deluxe edition of 2005 and the Absolute, he basically drew a comic with his comments as part of it. So this is much more succinct and really dwells on the art. I really appreciated it. Normally, I skip the introduction and I read it last. But this book really, it's as you say, chronological. It's so important to go right from the beginning. Don't skip anything. Spend time on the layouts. Spend time on the ink boards. You know, you got to move through it to really enjoy the experience. I can't. This is yeah. That's it's funny. I was talking to somebody, and they said to me, "Well, now Batman Year One artist edition has come out. There's nothing higher for you. What now?" I thought, oh, so, you know, Paul Smith, Doctor Strange, of course. You know, that's, you got to move on to the next thing. But with so now you've worked with Mazzucchelli twice. You've covered his major work. He's got a few more things out there. Is there a possibility of maybe a third artist edition? Possibly, maybe City of Glass, a black and white work that would. If does Mazzucchelli keep all his art for everything?
You know, I sent David an email last week, and I said to him, how about doing an Asterius Polyp
Okay.
artist edition? And his response was, maybe in the next decade.
Oh, jeez.
And so, because that's a brilliant book, and that's a very groundbreaking book as well. So I think that would be, and I've never seen any of the originals, but I imagine they look great. Um, and then, and then for 15 years, I've been talking to him, telling him I want to do a rubber blanket collection, not an artist edition, but a collection. And he's not for whatever reason it's not available right now.
Okay. There's just so little work of his available, other than I mean, Marvel and DC are smart to keep these in print, but yeah, the other things we just I feel like we've missed out on, or are missing out on what could be.
Sure.
Any other thoughts on the book?
Uh, sure. Funny. Ask me a question.
But you know that it's hard sometimes to frame the because I mean we have the original art. I can is there anything really to say about that? So that's why I say the design.
Well, I'll tell you what. Okay, how about if we talk about how the design came to be in the book?
Okay.
Because that's a story unto itself, I think. Um, so Chip came on board, and David sent me a very well thought out PDF with an entire pagination for the book. And most of it, it was probably like 85%, maybe 90% there already, in the pagination. Definitely 90%. And because of a couple of things, we need to rework some things. I mean, and it took a while reworking it because of the vellum. We needed to have very specific placement. So that took a while. We went back and forth. We went back and forth on the pagination a lot. I mean, it took honestly much longer than it should have. And it might have taken 2 months altogether, because we were digesting it. And also, David's working on other things. I'm working on other things. So, everything, this wasn't a book to be rushed. Um, so we finally worked on the pagination. David agreed with it. Chip went ahead and did the design. He was already working on the design before the pagination was done because we had a specific idea of things that would be in there for sure. The introduction, I love what he did with the image sort of on two spreads, um, connected. But and then Chip did the design. There was talk over some time about the colors, about the black, and then the gray. And when that was finally finalized, then there were some adjustments that needed to be made to the artwork. Um, some of them were not 100% same size. They were increased or made a little bit smaller. I'm not talking about the design stuff. I'm specifically talking about the art that's in the book. And so those were all adjusted to 100%. There were also some images that needed to be rescanned because of the design. If on those two spreads, that particular piece was in the hands of a collector, and so I had to go up to LA and shoot it very large because it's blown up a lot as a design piece, and we wanted to make sure that it showed as the art, even though it was a design piece. Uh, and then and then when the design was done and Chip was pretty much done, he had done the book as well as the sell sheet, the slipcase, um, all that stuff. But then when it came down to finalizing the book, David had, I had told David, I will make this the book you want it to be. And unlike Daredevil Born Again, he took me up on that. And there were, I don't know how many adjustments he wanted, but it was, you know, I don't know if it was 100, but it might have been.
Wow.
And because nearly every page had some kind of an adjustment to make sure the pages lined up a certain way against each other, to make sure that everything was cut to the exact size of the art. Um, Moving things around here and there. And so if there's an unsung hero in this book, it's a gentleman from IDW named Nate Wittick, because Nate not only made all those changes, but did it with incredible good cheer. I mean, he did a tremendous job. And then so the four of us, me, not as much as the others, all did what we could to make it a book worthy of the material. And I I'm biased, but I like the way it came out.
The how important is the or what is the printer in the process?
Oh,
Obviously to get the final, but I mean, did they come back to you and said, "Oh, this in this day and age now, is anything impossible?" Do they come back to you and say, "Oh, we can't quite do that. We've got to make this adjustment"?
the only limitations were placing the vellum. There's actually a third piece of vellum that wasn't done because we couldn't make it work, but it wasn't necessary. At least David felt it wasn't necessary, and Chip and I agreed. It was the one page that has just the moon, and that was a color hold, and that with all the bats. So the page just has the bats, and everyone felt we didn't lose anything by not having that. Luckily,
No, really.
if it had to be in, it would be a different book.
Okay. Do you have input on how the box is made?
What do you mean, the interior box or the exterior box?
No, the interior box, right? So this box.
I have input into into the sticker, but including the placement of it. But what do you mean about the the
So,
box?
I do like to get into the semantics of things. So that like this box is slightly different. So instead of it's got four tabs, it's got four large tabs, two in the middle and then two on each end. And the cardboard is a little thinner. So I notice as as I get a new artist edition from IDW, and the boxes, the design changes slightly here, there, and over the years it's changed dramatically. But is this like as an example? Is this printer the same printer you've used for the last three or four books?
Yes, it is. And we stopped using our original printer who've done, 80% of the artist editions because they weren't available anymore. And so we have a new printer, and the print quality, as far as I'm concerned, is great.
Yes.
I have no problem at all, and I happily work with them.
So no,
But I don't understand what's this crazy concern about the box?
it's one more thing, right? So because sometimes the tabs don't stay in, and so I think I've told you I keep all of them in the boxes. So when you take them out and I look at them again and I do videos with them and just I noticed the tabs don't stay closed. The way the cardboard folds, it doesn't stay folded anymore, like the Wally would, right? The cardboard never stayed folded, so it sort of pops, and then the cover doesn't stay closed, and the book, when I'm moving things around, the book sort of falls out of the box. So it's fair. You just I'm so deep into the minutiae of this stuff. It's hard to see the forest from the tree sometimes. You get caught up in little things.
Scott, you love this stuff so much. You should start a website about artist editions.
Sounds like a lot of work. Huh?
I think that would be great. By the way, anybody watching this should know that Scott does have a website and he has a Patreon, and that you should all reach out and support. But anyway,
Very generous. Thank you. Yeah, that's
it's the best site about artist editions. It's the site that if I forget something, I go to his site to. He knows more about artist editions than I do. And it's not just my artist editions, it's all of them. But anyway, go ahead.
thankfully
Commercial.
there's not enough room for a second site from somebody else. So got that
Right.
market locked in. So as what role is Nate's role at IDW? I think we need, if this unsung hero, I think we need to learn a little bit more about him.
Well, in this particular book, I mean, he's the guy who's, I don't, sorry, Nate, I don't know what the hell your title is, but he's like the production manager, whatever that title, whatever his title is. Um, and he generally doesn't do this kind of stuff. But, when David had all of these things that he wanted to adjust, I mean, literally a lot, Chip just sort of went, I'm not doing that. Nothing against Chip. I get it. But so it was left to Nate, and Nate came through, like a champ. And I would not put this in his regular job description. I guess, his job description is all encompassing, but this particular job was not something that he had ever done before. And, my hat is off to him.
I did notice there's no proofreader credited on this book. Is proofreading no longer a thing?
No, it is. It is. We just don't. IDW does not give credit to proofreaders anymore.
Oh, okay. Oh, interesting. The this book was available briefly as a signed limited edition with a slipcase. That sold out quickly. 250 copies. Mine's supposed to arrive on Monday, so I'm excited for that. UPS gave me the notice, and there was a clamor on the day it was released, and then another clamor as people say, "Oh, I got my notice, and it's coming." Very few artist editions have you done with a slipcase. Is it a construction concern? Is it a cost concern? Is it just You like to do the signed numbered editions, but very, like I say, very few with the slipcases. Why is that?
Well, how many have had slipcases? Has it been three now?
Well, we have Bone, we have the
Oh,
sketch
and okay, the
sketch
Thor,
Thor,
but that was a special case. The Thor,
Sonic.
Bone, Gru, but Gru and Thor were because yeah, Gru and Bone, and then obviously
The sketch Tarzans.
the Somni.
Did the
I'm sorry,
sketch did the sketch Tarzans have slipcases or no? Those are just right on the book.
oh yeah, they did. So I guess there were maybe like eight or ten, more than I actually remember. In this case, and the Somni, kind of had to have a slipcase because it was two books. On the on this particular one, the first one had a slipcase, so I felt we had to,
Okay.
even though they're different sizes. So I mean, if they were the same size, that would be better. But maybe I should have shrunk Batman Year One and made it the same size. What
That
do you
sounds
think?
like a terrible idea. That's
Yeah,
terrible.
I know.
No, it's just it's so nice to add that little bit of extra on the book. Did so do you have to print the signature pages and then send them to David and then he signs them and sends it back and then they're bound into the book or
No, we send all 10,000 books themselves to David. Yes, of course we do.
just
Um,
maybe people don't know that.
all right, all right. Um, it's funny because I have friends who do signed versions of books on Kickstarter, and I always tell them, no, 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 don't send, don't have the book sent to you. Talk to me next time. Um, it's easy. All you do is, well, I mean, I don't know if it's easy. It's easy for people who don't do this kind of stuff. Basically, you have a design page or you have a signature page designed um, with everything. It goes through approvals, so it goes to David, it goes to DC, and then we print up. Um, we print up basically, like on this book, for instance, we probably printed 300 signature plates. And they all go to David. He signs them all, sends them back. They are numbered 1 to 250. There's also an AP, so they are also signed, but they're not numbered. AP stands for artist proof, and that is for comps and promotional purposes. So those go out to, David got three of those, I think. Chip got three. Other people got some. And then the other 25 are for spoilage damages,
Oh, okay.
in case anything happens. So if a signature plate is accidentally destroyed while it's being bound, which does happen.
You had mentioned before, are slipcases still handmade for these?
Yes.
Right. Is that again? My knowledge of printing is very limited. They cannot produce that, or isn't everything machinable at this point?
No, not everything.
All right.
And thank goodness for that, I mean, honestly, having something handmade is, even if it's mass produced, I like that.
Hmm.
I don't know why, but I do.
What is your expectation for this book as far as I know it's hard to quantify this because you've also got Neil Adams coming. Do you feel this will be the biggest artist edition ever? Do you feel it will surpass Neil Adams or no? You feel Neil Adams will surpass this?
Well, it won't be the biggest artist edition ever because
In sales, I'm sorry. Let me.
no, no, I know. It might be, I don't know what the sales are going to be. IDW, um, the sales department and I have had some conversations about this book, and they have an odd way, to my thinking, of soliciting artist editions. They basically solicit them after they are printed. And I had some talks with um, the publishers as well as the marketing people. I pointed out that DC, for instance, when they have a when they have a catalog, they will put a book, they will solicit a book if it's a big hardcover. You know, if it's in the November catalog, it'll be for June, for instance. And if it's in the November catalog and it's a comic, it's January. And that's how they solicit stuff, not through PRH. PRH is done much, much earlier. But for Diamond and comic distributors, they do it 2 months out, which, when Batman Year One was solicited through Diamond, and I'm assuming Lunar and whoever else, it was already printed by the time retailers ordered it. So the numbers on Batman Year One will definitely be less than the Neil Adams book, which they also, did the same way, but that book they took a higher position on for the print run. Um, they're professional, they know what they're doing. Um, I disagree with it personally, but because I always feel it's better to have a greater idea of what the print run is or what the demand is going to be. I think maybe that was underestimated, but we'll see, and if it was underestimated, then they can go back to press, which, will take 4 or 5 months. But the same thing happened with the Jim Lee X-Men book. That book had a print run that was low and it sold out right away. And then it was reprinted, with the same amount that came out like 4 or 5 months later. I mean, the nice thing about this is they could go back to print immediately, and it'll take some time, but all the work is done. They would just need to change a couple of little things.
Jim Lee was the first artist edition that received an additional printing with no actual indication on the outside of the book or anywhere other than if you look on the colophon, you see that it's a second printing based on how the numbering goes in that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the book code there that they use. And later reprintings of other things you've always done a different cover. And was that a decision because PRH was now involved with the Jim Lee book that we're just going to keep
I
it
think it
going?
was more a matter of timing. We wanted to get it to market as soon as possible.
Oh.
And also, it's such a great cover.
Mm. So
And,
that
also, if you do a different cover, you're almost forcing people to buy it again. And I'm not a fan of that.
all right.
Although I mean, I do occasionally do different covers, but generally there's a reason for that.
Was there any thought of a second cover for, say, this book?
Sure. I mean, we had talked about other options, but these two images were, Chip picked them, and they're great.
Mm. So
I
now,
can't imagine changing the cover. No.
well, both Mazzucchelli artist editions now have used a promotional piece of art for the cover and not a piece from the story. Was that on purpose? I know was it David's choice? Was this piece for this book, or was that Chip's choice?
It was Chip's choice, and I don't think, I wouldn't read too much into that. Um, I mean, I guess it could fit in the narrative of chronological order, but Honestly, it doesn't. It's just, the two images for the front and back cover were just beautiful images. And the image on the back with the tape is just perfect. That actually, I'll tell you a funny story. I got a text. I when I got the book, I got a text because I posted a picture on either Instagram or Twitter or maybe both, and it blew up. I mean, I got thousands of responses, or likes, and then hundreds of responses. I got a text from Jim Lee, and Jim texted me, "Oh my God, is that the original cover? Did David give it to you?" And I wrote back, LOL, Jim, that's the cover of the artist edition. And he wrote back, "Thank God. I'd have to kill you if it was the original." Something like that.
It's pretty. It's very iconic. Is it actual vellum still, or is it just that's just the term used?
I don't know.
It feels. It doesn't quite feel like it feels like a plastic.
It might be.
Uh,
I don't think it really matters.
Oh, just or yeah, it almost the like with the Born Again. It had a different feel, almost like onion skin.
Yeah.
This time it's yeah, all right. The you've made a few promotional videos over the years. I want to say this one had a bit more production. You had a guest star in it doing it. Previously, I think the last one you did was maybe not Thor. Maybe it was the Wrightson. I don't know. They're online, but
My memory is terrible. You know that.
this time around, right? You got a big name. You got Mike Mignola to do this promotional video. What was the thinking? First off, to do a promotional video, and did you like? If I'm thinking of work that is going to be an artist edition that does not need an introduction or does not need hype, it strikes me as this book. You go with a big. Mike Mignola is a pretty heavy hitter. What was the process and how did that come about? And then how did he get involved?
Well, on the video, I had pitched that a few times, and it was met with, a fairly positive response. And then nothing happened, and I basically had to bring it up several times. My thinking behind that was to do we've done plenty of videos that are just me saying, "Hey, look at this book," and flipping through it. Honestly, who cares? Those are totally forgettable, truly. In this particular case, I pitched the idea of doing two videos, one for Batman Year One and one for Neil Adams. And the way that the Batman Year One video came about was, um, I pitched doing a video that would be a little bit different. It would be sort of talking about the book and then having somebody specifically to talk about it. And I thought Mike Mignola would be the perfect choice because, he won't agree with this, but I feel he's sort of in the same school as David, and there's certainly contemporaries. Michael is very much in the public eye. I mean, Hellboy is one of the biggest things in comics from the last 30 years. And so, while you and I know Batman Year One, a lot of other people might not. It's not like David has a huge body of work. And, the things he's been most known for the last dozen years aren't really in the mainstream at all, as great as they are. So to me, I wanted to get somebody who could speak eloquently about the project. And so we got approval from IDW to do to do the videos, and we set it up so we would shoot both of them on the same day, the Mike Mignola and the Neil Adams one. I'm sorry, the Mike Mignola and the Neil Adams video, which was me interviewing Jim Lee. So we we drove up to LA in January. And let me also start by or interject here that um, one of the main marketing guys at IDW, and I don't know anybody's title, sorry. His name is Ob Driver. I give him credit because he really found a great film crew, and they knocked it out of the park. Um, on the David Mazzucchelli Batman Year One video, we went up to Mignola. We I interviewed him in his living room for maybe, I don't know, an hour, hour and a half. Might have been less. I don't think it was more than that. And got a lot of material that was able to be condensed down to what you see in the video. And it's interesting because the that particular video, you'll notice that there are captions that tell the story of Batman Year One. The original letterer on Batman Year One was Todd Klein. So I reached out to Todd. I've worked with him before, and I asked him to do the captions, and he agreed. And they're in the same style as the captions that are in the book, which I thought was cool. And I wrote all the captions. I sent them to Todd. He sent them back to me. I sent them to David to make sure that. Actually, no, I didn't send them to David. I just showed him the finished video. But anyway, so the captions were all done. The guys who produced the video, and I wish I knew their names because I would definitely mention them because they did a great job. Not only did they put together the video, but one of them did an amazing job of composing the music that's in the video. So originally we were going to use public domain music, and then the guy is a composer, and he just went, you know what, I'll do it. And he did a killer job. The music really fits the video, and um, then I went through and there are very specific things that Mike talks about in the video. He talks about um, a strap of a nightgown. And so as he's talking about that, I called out to insert that page from the book. And I tried to pick individual pages or panels that fit. And I wasn't the director of the video, but I guess I'd almost call myself like the showrunner. And I had a lot of fun doing it. And then it took a while, because both I and DC had a bunch of notes for the crew, and they made all the changes, and it came out great. I showed it to David, and his only comment I think was, "That looks great, thank you." And after we were done at Mike and Christine's house, we then drove over to the Warner Brothers lot to DC Comics, and we interviewed Jim Lee for his video talking about Neil Adams. And I'm not sure what the status is of that because I left IDW and I didn't finish working on it. But they have all the footage, and I also picked art for them for the video. So I'm sure that they could go ahead and do it at some point.
How do you quantify if the video was a success in that, it increases sales, or is that's just too nebulous thing? You just got to throw it out there and hope it does its job.
How do you quantify if the space program is worth doing? You know, I mean, there's so many things that come out of it, but it costs money. And, I mean, this obviously doesn't cost nearly what, the Apollo missions cost or Skylab, but, it was a chunk of change. Um, but to me, if you go on the PRH site, they have the video there and you can really see what the book is going to be. So to me, it's worth it. I think, it wasn't a huge amount of money. And I think the value and the exposure is unquestionably worth it to me.
Well, that's what matters at the time. I was, it's interesting to flip through the book. I never noticed it, but as I'm looking at the art at this size, I, and then David actually says, there's almost like there's such a Toth influence on his artwork. Then he says in the introduction, he hadn't seen any Toth artwork when he was drawing this book. It's unbelievable. Also, I mean, I love that he bases Batman and Bruce Wayne on Gregory Peck because you really see Gregory Peck come through in the artwork. It's just it's what will you take away from this book and the design changes that happen? And what do you feel really adds to your arsenal moving forward with artist editions?
It's an interesting question.
I had to work
Um,
one in there somewhere.
what's that?
I had to work one interesting question in there somewhere.
Um, hopefully we all learn from what we do, and in publishing, in doing these kinds of books, I think it's important to pay attention to what you're doing, new things. It's also important to look and see what other publishers do, and take what you can from other works as well. So, I hope I'll incorporate more things, into my arsenal, as you say. But we'll see.
All right, that's really all I had about this book. I want to thank you for coming on and discussing this. All I can do is encourage everyone who has any just mild interest in original art and comics. This is if you need to own one artist edition, it's got to be this book. There's no there's no other way to say it.
Thank you. It was, honestly, I'm a sappy kind of guy, so I'll say, in all honesty, it was a privilege to work on this book. It's a book that I wanted to do for more than a decade.
It really shows. The book shines completely.
Thank you.
Well done, and thank you again.